Am I a powerful person in this relationship, or do I live as a powerless volunteer? See, there's a difference between being a victim and being a volunteer. The victim, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was going to happen. I got hit by a car. I didn't see the car. I got attacked in an alley or whatever. I didn't see that coming. But when I live it every day, I'm not a victim. I'm a volunteer.
Thanks for joining us on It Matters with Esther and Elizabeth. I am Esther.
And I'm Elizabeth.
And on this podcast, we like to discuss difficult topics and forsake culture and popular teaching and say, what does the Bible actually have to say about this?
Yes, and if you'd like to find more from us online, you can find us on Instagram at itmatters_podcast. We're also on YouTube and Patreon. If you're tuning in for the first time, our focus of season 4 has been on relationships and reconciliation. God placed it on our hearts to talk through everything related to this, as our relationship with God and with each other is essential to being human. So if you haven't already, please go and check out our recent episodes for more on this issue. We've covered issues like reconciling anger, doubt, church hurt, modern day miracles, and so much more. So go and take a listen.
And we're currently going through a series on family of origin because we know that that's where a lot of the sticky relationships lie, in order to understand what healthy dynamics look like and how we are meant to be reconciled to each other in a way that glorifies God, no matter what the circumstances around those relationships may be. Today, Elizabeth and I can't wait to introduce to you the guy that we have on today. He's one of my personal catalytic heroes. I can safely say that I feel like there are few people who have affected my life and my relationships more than this man and the wisdom that God speaks through him. And that is our guest, Danny Silk. Danny Silk, if you're unfamiliar with him, is a renowned author, biblical relationship dynamic. He knows so much about it. He's authored and co-authored several fabulous books that you've probably heard of before. He runs classes and conferences that have helped thousands of people worldwide to help break down relationships and relationship dynamics in the toughest of circumstances. I personally came across Danny's works a few years ago when I was in an enormous moment of personal crisis. And the counselor that was working with me is the one that pointed me to him. And reading Keep Your Love On, his book especially, just completely changed the way that I do relationships, working with core relational wounds and patterns, and just bringing freedom to places that I had absolutely no hope over and felt so lost and overwhelmed by. So God has used him just profoundly to help people, I really feel like, unlock places where they feel emotionally caged or like they're at an absolute impasse and they're not sure how to move forward through the pain. So my hope is when we introduce him that the things that we're going to discuss with Danny will help give you a taste about these life-giving perspectives that he outlines in some of his books, the way that they so positively affect me, and also maybe that you'll give his podcast a listen to, because he is just filled with so much wisdom. And this is an area that we greatly care about, family dynamics and relational health. And we know that God cares about it too. So we'll invite Danny on right now. Okay, Danny, thank you so much for joining us today. We are so honored to have you on. Just to kind of introduce yourself to our listeners, would you mind giving us a quick rundown about how God began stirring these things up in your heart, just in terms of keeping your love on, what your heart is burdened for? What's your backstory on that? How did that all begin?
Well, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be with you, and I appreciate all the opportunity to get the word out. I think probably my calling in life really has been to help people build and heal and strengthen their most vital relationships. So that starts with their identity with Christ and knowing their Father loves them, and to know how to access and utilize the Holy Spirit to chase away fear and to partner with love. That's always been, in various ways, that's always been the same goal. So I kind of feel like at this point in my life, more laser than ever before. But it started with, in group homes with adolescents, and it moved through social work and foster care and adoptive care, and then it turned into pastoring a church and leading a group of people in a small community and being super active in domestic violence batters treatment programs, and then moves on into a global platform. And I've written 5 or 6 books and co-authored 3 others, and writing 3 currently. And so it's just kind of a ongoing life cycle. And my daughter and her husband are taking over Loving on Purpose. And and if anybody's heard the Kylo Show podcast, there's
Yes.
lots of getting to know Brittany. And um, and we currently have we're working on something called a Kylo community, which is a Facebook page and a monthly call. And then we're working on the Kylo University. So we will be teaching people how to rock their relationships, and then leads that into Kylo coaches. Kylo stands not for Kylo Ren, but for Keep Your Love On. And
I have thought of that before. I was going to say that's
right,
funny.
we were around before Kylo Ren was
Very
around.
true. You were.
Yeah. So
Yeah. I was absolutely going to plug your show at the end of this. That's Keep Your Love On, the Kylo Show for you podcasters. We know you love podcasts, but I couldn't recommend that enough, you guys. So that's helpful to know a bit of the backstory where this passion began.
there you go.
So we're curious, talking about Keep Your Love On, your book, and obviously the show as well. Would you break down, for those that are unfamiliar, kind of the 5 core values of this type of relational health dynamic and really what that's all about?
Are you referring to the Kylo 5?
Yes, the Kylo 5.
The Kylo 5. Well, the Keep Your Love On 5 starts with being a powerful person, right? Because powerful people are going to take responsibility for themselves. They're gonna realize that no one controls them, and they can't control anybody else. So since nobody controls me, if I don't control myself, I'm out of control. So it very much is about self-control. A lot of people think that being a powerful person has to do with being aggressive or being dominating or being angry even. And it has nothing to do with any of those things. Those are actually things that lead you to being out of control. But being a powerful person brings responsibility into yourself, and it makes you aware of the choices that you are accountable to exercise. So whether that's your attitude, your emotions, your words, your actions, and ultimately your habits and your character, these are all aspects that a powerful person starts with. So number 1, powerful person. Number 2, choosing love over fear. You have one of 2 counselors. You have the counselor of love, who leads you to connection, who leads you to growth, leads you to peace, leads you really to freedom and truth, or the counselor of fear, which leads you to self-preservation, leads you to defensiveness and blame. So, you really have to decide in your conversations, in your interactions, even in your disconnects with other people, who will be my counselor. And you have to, a powerful person has to choose love, because it doesn't come naturally. What naturally happens is you go to fear, you go to self-preservation, quite without effort. So accessing the spirit of love and then following the leadership of love would be number 2. Number 3 would be that you pursue the goal of connection in your relationships, meaning that you realize you have a choice. You have a choice to uh, build connection, get it back. Disconnection is the biggest problem in the world. Getting connection back with your children, with your spouse, with your friends, with coworkers, whatever it might be, you really are pursuing the goal of connection. versus the goal of distance. 100% of the time I would do any marriage counseling, I would ask, what is the goal of your marriage? And people did not know what I was asking. They're just kind of deer in the headlights, like, what are you talking about? And they don't realize that once you get disconnected and you operate in disconnection for a period of time, it becomes your goal. So if somebody tries to connect with you and your goal is distance, you throw a relational grenade out there and boom, you get your distance back. So when my goal is distance, you can't do anything right. You can't connect with me. And then I turn it around. Any efforts that you make, I turn around and blame you for trying to control or manipulate me because my goal is not connection. So
Mm.
pursue the goal of connection. And then number 4 is respectful communication, meaning that my intention in our conflict, working out our disconnect, is to lower anxiety between you and I. So I choose my words carefully. I choose my words responsibly. I tell you about me. I don't tell you about you, because I'm going to be respectful through all of our conversations. And then number 5, respect healthy boundaries. And healthy boundaries is me telling you what I'm going to do with me. I would be glad to finish this conversation if it stays respectful. The moment it gets disrespectful, I know how dangerous that is for me to stay in a disrespectful conversation, because I'm quite likely to become disrespectful if I hang in this very too long. So I'll be setting a boundary that communicates that I manage me on a good day, and I'm going to try to keep this a good day. So I'll tell myself what to do, and I'm not sure what you're going to do with you. I don't control your mouth. I don't control your attitude. I don't control your perspective. I'm going to work on controlling all those things about me. So be powerful, win the battle between between fear and love, keep connection as the goal, communicate respectfully, honor healthy boundaries.
Do you see why I love this so much? I just
Yes.
love it. Honestly, because everything that you're
amazing.
saying is everything our spirit longs for, but it's so counterintuitive to the fleshly reaction. Every
Yeah.
single thing. It's like the exact opposite for what we're intuitively going to choose. Something that I'd love to just highlight, and you definitely talked about this, but that idea of the powerful person versus the powerless person, that really gets down to everything that we want, which is to feel like an individual and powerful to make choices, and everything we don't want, and what a lot of times ends up happening, which is somebody feels powerless and like you're a victim to somebody else's bad behavior. Would you talk a little bit about just that resonance for people that feel like, oh man, I'm definitely a powerless person in the way that I conduct myself? Well, some of those things being like railroaded in conversation, and what are some ways that someone that immediately in feeling powerless can start exercising those, move towards being a powerful person?
Well, I think that it's not uncommon to experience a lot of powerlessness in your exchange with your parents, right? So, big people kind of dominate, intimidate, manipulate their children, and so children pick up those tendencies as how you get your way, how you get your needs met, how you find a safe place. So human beings meet other human beings trained in the same uh, communication of, being aggressive, being passive aggressive. That all feels very normal and natural. Is I try to get you to do things to help me, and then you try to get me to do things to help you, and we're never honest and responsible. So trying to establish the reality that I don't control you, I don't control whether you love me, I don't control whether you're happy, I don't control whether you're angry, I don't control anything about you, and you don't control anything about me. So as soon as people start acting powerful, the relationship dynamic starts to break down, because I think you don't care about me. You're not trying to control me. You must not care about me. You're not jealous and overreactive when I act like a flirt or when I pretend to be uninterested. You don't come chasing me down and try to make me do something in the relationship, you don't try. You threaten to walk out. I don't try to stop you. All this starts to communicate that you don't really love me, because if you really loved me, you'd try to control me.
So
And
good.
now, this is it's very difficult when you grow up thinking that when people try to control you, they love you. And if you love them, you'll try to control them. This is the fostering of powerlessness,
Yeah.
because I don't control you. You don't control me. The truth is, you can't make me do anything. And if I believe that I can make you love me, then it's my job to make you love me.
Hmm.
If I believe that you can make me love you, then you should try to make me love you. That is a terrible revelation. The day somebody realizes, I don't control anybody else, I don't even control myself yet. I'm going to go
Hmm.
to work on controlling myself. And I'm going to start by telling myself what to do. And I'm going to tell you that I love you, and I'm going to show you that I love you, but I'm not going to convince you that I love you, because I can't. If your goal with me is connection, then this is going to work. If your goal with me is distance, then our relationship's going to break down, because I'm not going to come over there and do your part of the relationship. I'm going to work on doing my part of the relationship. I'll tell you about me. I will say what I mean what I say, and do what I say I'm going to do. But I have no power to get you to tell me the truth, or to get you to protect our connection. So it just in a practical thing that you can do, just pay attention to how many times you say, I have to, I can't, I'll try.
Hmm.
That's powerless language. I have to, I have to go to work. I have to. Actually, no, you don't. Nobody's going to make you do any of that. I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't. Yes, actually, you can. You've done it 8 times this week so far. You can eat another pizza. You can stay up watching video games. You can keep lying to your spouse because you don't want to face the consequences. You can. I'll try. Well, I'll try. I'll try to change. I'll try to get on this. I'll try. Is asking permission to stay irresponsible. Just
Good.
imagine going before the preacher and he says, do you take this woman to be your wife? And you say, I'll try. I'm going to try really hard on this one. This is probably the hardest I've ever tried in my life. Like, that sounds ridiculous, right? Why?
Yeah.
Because that's not a commitment.
Yeah.
It's a request to be irresponsible.
Oh,
So
that's good.
just listen to your language for have to, can't, try, and change it to will, choose to, choose not to, I won't. So I will, I won't, I did. And you can just feel the power move from out there, somebody else is making me do it, to it's in here and I decide.
Just personal responsibility. That's so
Wow.
great.
I can
Thank you.
feel my anxiety calming down as you're talking. This is it's very illuminating for me. So we talk about you a lot, Danny. You didn't know this, but we've talked about your book Unpunishable on our podcast, and we really would just love to hear more. You've mentioned as humans that we have an instinct to punish someone or make them pay for the wrongs when we feel they've wronged us. Would you speak a little bit more to the differences between discipline and punishment, both in God's attitude towards us, as well as how we are to reflect that as people in family relationships?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, punishment is a behavior to inflict significant suffering to yield control of someone, because that's really what we're after. What we're after is removing the threat. So, bad behavior or poor choices or things that bring about consequences that affect our life is something we'd like control of. So if we can threaten other people with severe enough suffering, they may just yield their self-control to us to make it look like we're controlling them. So this is kind of the false responsibility that parents have when somebody says, you need to control your child. Well, good luck with that, because these people did not come with a remote control. So parents intensify their intimidation and threat until they look like Jafar. They're like, you will obey me. And pretty soon kids figure out, oh, you're just scared. You're scared that you can't control me. And then by the time these are teenagers, the gig is up and the teenagers are, oh, go ahead, take one more thing away from me. Issue one more threat. I'm not afraid of you. I'm not going to let you control me. And now the parents are just absolutely powerless because they don't know what to do with the monster they created because their magic tricks don't work anymore. Versus discipline. Discipline has the word disciple in it, right? Learner. And learning happens from the inside out. And so I'm inviting you into learning about life, learning about choices, learning about self control, learning about the consequences of bad choices and the rewards of good choices. While I stay connected to your heart, while I engage you with empathy and I lead you and guide you and stay with you while you're learning about life. Punishment usually has an inflicted suffering and a casting out experience where you are now, that's part of the punishment is rejection, and isolation is part of the punishment. So it's very similar to the prison process where we throw somebody in a cage, we beat them up before we throw them in a cage and we just leave them there to suffer alone, versus discipline or training or teaching or even coaching, where I stay with you while we work through what it is that you've learned in your mistake that you can apply to your next challenge and hopefully leads to growth and change.
That's so good. You're just helping somebody be a powerful person rather than dictating to them how they must. It's all about control and letting somebody exercise their own self-control, which is just so huge. I don't remember if we mentioned this at the beginning, particularly when we were chatting, but our main focus in this series that we're doing right now is all about family of origin. And I can see so strongly just how everything flows out of that. All the breakdown flows out of family of origin and so many details, especially within the parental child relationship. Something that you've talked so much about that I just love is your understanding of boundaries and healthy boundaries. And you talk about boundaries being a path, almost like an opportunity or an invitation back to deeper connection. Would you, for those who are unfamiliar with that, I love the way you describe it, the point of boundaries, because it's such a hot topic word. Everybody's trying to say boundaries this, boundaries that, I have a million boundaries and it's just how I protect. That people actually are losing the point of it, not about rejection. So if you could talk about boundaries, that'd be awesome.
Right. Yeah. And the misapplication of boundaries is just another fear-driven self-preservation move. And so when I throw down a boundary because you hurt me or you scared me, and I say, don't call me, don't talk to me, you're out of my life. I'm just setting a boundary. Rejection is not a boundary. Boundaries come built in with the hope of reconciliation. So there is a process that is uh, a part of a healthy relationship, and that is tending to the broken connection, tending to the place where there has been a breach. So when we offer boundaries, we are cultivating higher standards of relationship. So some people think that because I'm a loving person, everyone has the same access to my life. And like, no, actually, you can't have spousal type access with very many people. Like
No.
one.
More than
Like
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
let's say you got one level of spouse access to your life. That's enough. That'll keep you busy for a while if you're doing a good job with it.
Yes.
Then children level access. You can only support so many children level access to your time, energy, and resources before you start to break down and come apart. So
Mm,
you got to protect. There's only so many for that. Then outside of that is your immediate family, maybe your extended family, good friends. Outside of that, maybe coworkers that you would drop everything to help, but that there's only so many of those. Then outside of that are people that you know at church and the community, your neighborhood, other relatives, whatever, that you maybe wouldn't call back the same day that you heard that something happened to them or whatever. And then outside of that, let's say you have a public life, you have so many people that would love to get your time, your energy, your resources, your whatever. And you keep those people out there. And the only time you give them that kind of access is on a calendar. And
mhm.
it's for this much time because you're like, yeah, I'd love to, but I can't do it with everybody. So
Like being on this
boundaries,
podcast. Great example. It's just
being
you
on
have to
this
allocate.
podcast, because
Yeah.
as soon as I said yes to you, I said no to everybody else on the planet, right?
It's true.
So there
Yeah.
you go. Yeah. And so you have to watch over your yes, because as soon as you really say yes, you just said no to everything else.
Yeah.
So if you don't protect those yeses, then with the no's, then you won't say yes to your child. You won't say yes to your spouse. You won't say yes to that really important friendship. You won't say yes to that leader that you want to see grow. You won't, because you didn't say no, and all the no's ate up your really important yeses. So
Mhm.
boundaries are really about managing levels of access so that you surround your life with where you want to invest it and who actually nourishes you. So
Mm,
the top access is from relationships that are thriving, that
mm,
build tons of quality into my life. That's how a spouse can get moved out, is
mm.
that they do not work out their relationship with you, with your kids, with your in-laws. Pretty soon there's an agitation. And now this relationship is sitting out here trying to get back in because they're not adding to the thriving of the quality of my overall life.
Wow. That's a very slippery slope, and why it's so important to you use this phrase a lot, and I love it, to clean up your mess, which is when
Yeah.
there's damage, to take responsibility and build that back. Can we ask you some of our burning questions now? So that's a little teaser taste for those of you guys who are curious. Keep your love on, unpunishable. Loving our children on purpose is one of my favorite ones. I'm actually almost at the end of it right now, and it's been so incredible. But we talked to one thing on our heart is to especially counsel women through relational issues. And as soon as we opened ourselves up to that, you would not believe the amazing amount of relational issues that we are talking about. So fun.
Right.
And in our own lives. So I am particularly interested, especially with what women seem to struggle with, are those closest relationships within the family. So if we could talk with you about a few of them. When you're identifying the problem, the breakdown with somebody, how do you go about doing that without vilifying somebody? So I love that you say that we've all been the bad guy to somebody before. So which really levels the playing field and keeps us from victimizing ourselves, because we've been the bad guy to somebody, and vice versa. How do you keep your love on towards somebody that is harming you if they are supposed to be a safe place? How do you do life with them while guarding your heart? You're talking about those kind of levels, but especially when someone's supposed to be a protector towards you, how do you, one, identify the issue without making them feel attacked? I think a lot of that has to do with language, but then also just, and we're going to ask more specific questions about this, but in relationship with them, when it's supposed to be a safe person, then you instantly feel like you have to be on your guard. You can't you can't let your walls down because you don't feel safe anymore. Yeah, if you could just talk
Well,
about that.
I would definitely recommend to everyone that they Kylo 5, right? Everyone
Yeah.
starts with me. Am I a powerful person in this relationship, or do I live as a powerless volunteer?
Hmm.
See, there's a difference between being a victim and being a volunteer. The victim, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was
Yeah.
going to happen. I got hit by a car. I didn't see the car. I got
Hmm.
attacked in an alley or whatever. I didn't see that coming. But when I live it every day, I'm not a victim. I'm a volunteer.
That's good. Yes. Hmm.
I just that was a
That was it. I love it.
That's
That's
a
very
very
pregnant
true.
pause right there. I want you to you got to own this stuff, because if you
Oh,
don't
yeah.
own it, you'll always expect somebody else to be nice to you.
Hmm.
In order for me to
Yeah.
have a respectful relationship, I have to have other people be respectful.
I think that's what everybody believes because it's what everyone is fighting for in relationship. You need to do this, and that is 1,000% the problem.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I need to find respectful people that I'm going to welcome into my life. I'm going to find responsible people that I'm going to welcome into my life. I'm not going to chain my life to a disrespectful, irresponsible person. The story of in Luke 15, where we see a son come to his dad and say, I wish you were dead so I could get the money that's coming for me. That's my money. I want it.
Yeah.
And that dad does something amazing. He gives it to him. He gives this disrespectful, irresponsible, out of control punk kid his inheritance, quite likely to go to his own death from his selfishness.
Yeah.
And that son leaves his house that day, as he should. And that father goes about his life watching the horizon for his son's return, hopefully one day. He doesn't know what's going to happen. And that kid, right into the pig pen. And then he comes to himself and he remembers, oh my gosh, I have a father who loves me. What am I doing? I'm a son. I'll go back and I'll punish myself. I'll offer to suffer publicly in humiliation as a servant. And the father sees him coming and runs out to him, embraces him, and restores him. Now, I mean, that's an intense story, but that's
Mm.
Jesus talking about the love of his Father. This is how real love actually works. Here is your inheritance. If you need to go destroy your life, bye. But this house, I'm protecting this house with there are no disrespectful, irresponsible people destroying the quality of this house.
I'm so fascinated by that applied though. When it comes to things like parents that don't understand those boundaries or have overreach and then don't understand any of this particularly, how you say I'm going to protect this when you want to be well, when you want to meet me at these standards, we would love to have you back. How that feels, I mean, just being totally honest, I'm hearing that going, that's from a parental perspective, that feels easier than from a child's perspective of there's been a boundary breach, there's been hurt that's occurred. Until we're willing to, you're willing to be respectful and respect those boundaries, then what does that look like when you apply it with parents maybe?
It would be best to start with toddlers
Yes, in an ideal
and teach
world.
your toddlers, because respect is something that is either part of your culture in your home or it isn't. And so if you are disrespectful to your own children, but demand respect from your children, good luck with that. Because
Mm,
those children will be disrespectful to each other. And
mm,
then when they're no longer afraid of your punishments, they'll be disrespectful to you.
mm,
And they will carry your family culture with them when they leave to school, when they leave to create their own home, when they go to a workplace, when somebody hurts them, scares them, or they feel powerless, disrespect is on the menu because
mm.
it's part of the family's culture. So I would start very early with high
Yeah.
levels of respect, high levels of responsibility, and and teaching my children to clean up their messes along the way
Mm,
so they know how to clean up a mess and they know how to prevent from making a mess. So
mm,
that when we get to adolescence, they're managing themselves and they know that our family culture has high levels of respect, high levels of responsibility, and they conduct themselves with each other as
mhm.
children with high levels of connection, respect, and responsibility.
So when this is brand new though, and you're person number one in your family who's introducing it, and then the whole emotional thermostat of your world is changed, then what I guess I'm really we have so many questions that come up about like I have this deal. I mean, Elizabeth's gonna ask a question here about
Yeah.
so something we have about like over, just I guess that respect within like parents and things like that. And I guess yes, you want to teach that to your children, but what does that look like when there's been years of a particular culture and you go, hang on a second, I'm having a paradigm shift and now things are going to be different. That's a lot
Yeah.
harder when people are used to experiencing, well, I can do whatever I want in your life all the time. Why is this different now? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Sure. Yeah. It's like being a recovering addict.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely, it is.
Every people pleaser I know. It's a thing. It's hard to unlearn those bad habits.
Right. And the people that you're around while you're an addict, they won't be around you when you start your recovery
Mm,
because they don't have the same goal.
yes.
And so you will be setting a boundary with their behavior and they will be setting a boundary with your behavior. And before you know it, you won't have the same friends.
Mm,
And maybe
yeah.
you're married to someone and you got into the marriage and into addiction together. And then one of you says, I'm not doing this anymore. And the other one thinks you're trying to control them. And so they'll go,
Mm,
oh, look at you, goody two shoes. You think you're all that. Well, you're not. I got pictures of you when you were just a mess. And that's who you really are. And you go to your meeting, you go to church, and you say, I love you, but I'm not going to have this conversation with you. And then you come home and they say, oh, so you think I'm evil. Now you think you're better than me. Oh, great. You just like you the king of the world. You go to church and you're all goody two shoes now. And you say, and I'm going to go to church and I'm going to go to my group and I'm going to walk this out. I love you. You look really upset. I'm sorry, but I'm not having this conversation with you. And
yeah.
then you come back and they say, I'm going to kill myself. I can't believe it. The rejection is just impossible to deal with. I'm out of here. I'm going to kill myself. If you don't jump back into addiction with me, I'm going to just kill myself. And you say, well, I will really miss you if that's what you decide to do. But I'm going to my meeting and I'm going to church and I'm going to live in this freedom. I love you very much, but you sound really upset. Maybe you might want to call somebody, but I got to go. And here you go. This person will do everything they can possibly throw at you to get you to jump back in with them
Mm,
before they decide, what am I going to do with me?
wow. Yeah. That's good. That's really, really
Okay.
helpful.
Okay.
Mm,
That is helpful. And like we've been saying, we talk to so many women all the time who really struggle with this, and kind of going back to the people in our lives who should be a safe space for us emotionally, like our parents, for example. So in a scenario, which is something that we hear a lot, let's say an adult child kind of communicates the hurtful pattern with their parents. For example, the parent keeps coming in, telling the child everything they're doing is wrong. The parent wants to speak the truth in love, but it's really just harsh and hurtful and damaging to the relationship when the parent is kind of crossing that boundary and continue to giving unwanted advice. And sometimes this is given in an extremely disrespectful and hurtful way, yelling, accusing, things like that. What would you say in terms of how to handle that? Is there a point in which the child says, we'd love to have you around when this pattern stops? How then do you go from there while still maintaining that culture of honor towards the parents?
Especially if you have to see them, like if you go to the same church or if you've got family dinners and things like that, because that seems to be something that's like, well, if it's a different relationship, there's an element of natural distance.
Yeah,
And
but when it's local,
yeah.
Well, I would want to make sure that I'm talking to somebody that understands what I'm saying, because I think that there's been such an emphasis on safe space and protecting my heart, and lots of language that your parents and my parents have no idea what you're talking about. Like, do what
True.
I said and clean up your room, or I'm going to get the belt, is pretty much the culture of what they understood leadership and parenting to be. So they thought they did a great job because they didn't talk like that, but they still expect you to respect them and to obey them. And now we have a generation of people who think, well, the only people I respect are people who are respectful. And the only people that I have around me are people who are enjoyable. And they're like, I don't understand what you're saying. And so it's like our children learned Russian and are talking to uh, adults in Russian. And the adults are like going, I don't understand what you're talking about. And the kids are going, you don't care about me. You're not a safe place. And there's this breakdown in, where did you learn any emotional health? And I'm just going to call it emotional health, because a bunch of it's not. A bunch of it's just reactive, self-preservation, punishment-driven craziness that young people are issuing to their parents, and the parents are scared and doing the same thing back, and it's just like being a teenager at home again.
Yeah.
So I would make sure, okay, we read this book, we listened to this podcast, we watched these training videos. We are doing something different in our family than was done in our family. Not because it was evil, but because we want a different culture.
Yeah.
And parents have to be brought along at some level, or you're just leaving them in the dust. And in your effort to uh, build better momentum in your family, you're breaking your family because they don't know how to play this game. So your kids are watching, and your kids are watching how you dealt with your parents who didn't understand, because one day you'll be those parents who don't
Hmm.
understand. And so it becomes vital that connection is the
Hmm.
goal, not control.
Hmm.
Because control was that's what you would, if you're not paying attention, you're doing the same thing your parents did. I'm going to fight for control. I'm not fighting for connection. So
Hmm.
fighting for connection will actually bring out the best in you,
Hmm.
and fighting for control will bring out the fear in you.
Hmm. Yeah, that's absolutely true. I think that it really does come down to fear and love. I was talking with a friend this week. She literally said to me, "Yeah, I get it. I just don't even like being around my parents, though. Like, what do you do when you?" I mean, that to me, that's a whole heart issue. But when you want connection, and she just doesn't even said, if they weren't my parents, we literally wouldn't even be friends. As believers, we have the Holy Spirit, so we have the opportunity to say it's a different world than everybody else is dealing with. What if you don't like your parents or your whoever it is that's bugging you and not respecting you and not coming under the same standard? What do you just advise people when they need that? They need something. What do you do when you talk to people about that? How to get that love back there?
Um, well, I mean, some people are married to people they don't like.
That's so common. Yeah. Yeah.
Some people have children that they don't like.
Hmm.
So vital covenant relationships don't have a whole lot to do with like.
Hmm.
They have to do with enjoying, like that's the
Hmm.
goal. The goal is to enjoy this relationship. So I will keep agitating to enjoy my relationship with you because that's where we bond the deepest is in joy.
Hmm.
But we may have to work to that goal, but it has to
Hmm.
be the goal.
Hmm.
And for a lot of people, they're like, it's not even my goal. I don't even like them. Well, that's your daughter. Why do you
Yeah.
think you didn't get to go to the mall and shop for children? You got what you got. So it's going to take more love than you issue naturally. It's going to take covenant love that you really only get from an unconditional source of love that
Hmm.
forces you to grow past what you feel like doing, what you like doing, what rewards you. And what we tend to uh, gravitate towards are relationships that reward us. So that's a friendship. We don't have
Hmm.
very many friends that are hard to get along with for very long, but you
Hmm.
do have marriage and family that reward you long term for growing past what was easy. So I think that
Hmm.
honor your mother and father is in the Bible for a reason. It doesn't say like them, it
Hmm.
says honor them. And
That's
honoring
good.
your mother and father is really about they get to be powerful in their conversation around what they need as much as you get to be powerful in your conversation around what you need. And that should have happened in the family when they were really small, but oftentimes these are really hard conversations that adult children have with their parents because their parents insist that the children stay children in their presence. And the children don't want to stay children in the presence of their adult family. So they have to begin to resist that. And what ends up happening is they disconnect and then they lose the relationship and they don't honor their mother and father. They live disconnected from their mother and father.
Hmm. That's very common. Yeah, I want to respect your time, Danny. I'm just trying to think of we have several questions left. I'm just trying to think. Another thing, what does honoring your parents look like where there are elements that kind of muddy the water? So there's a ton of generosity. Like we'll babysit your kids, we'll do all these great vacations. But when you're like, there's actually a breakdown here that needs to be healed first anytime that hard conversation comes up and then it's immediately, but look at all what we do. So we can't really have an honest conversation because I just keep saying you're so ungrateful. How would you what's the juggling with being honorable in that sense, but then also being grateful? Because then so easily someone can be guilted into saying, well, yes, I am so thankful for that, but this still is not okay. What would you say about that?
I think, all these conversations are they're not any fun, right?
No.
They're, 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 they're brave. What my friend Dan Fairley says, brave communication. This is where you have to put on your big boy or your big girl pants and you have to stay in the conversation when it gets really uncomfortable. But I would just set you up with saying, tell your parents about you, don't tell them about them. Tell your spouse about you, don't tell them about them. Tell your child about you, don't tell them about them. Tell your friend about you, don't tell them about them. Because well, the place we get ourselves in trouble is when I tell you something about you and I need you to agree with it. And it all just falls apart. Everything comes apart as soon as you say, that's not what I said. That's not what I was doing. That's not true. Now we have a fight. This is how you start a fight is tell somebody about them and need them to agree with you for this to move forward. So instead, just get good at saying, Mom, when you talk to me like that, I feel powerless. I feel like a child who's being scolded. I do not enjoy our relationship at all when that element is present. I need to feel like an adult in our conversations.
Yeah.
Now, that is me telling mom about me and what I need going forward. I didn't tell mom one thing about mom. But if you tell mom about mom, mom's going to say, I don't treat you like a child unless you act like a child. And every time we get in these conversations, you start acting like a child. Well, of course, I'm going to treat you like a child because you act like a child. And here we go. We're down in the muddy field, and there are no winners down there.
No, everybody's losing.
So, mom, I need to feel respected and powerful when we have a conversation. And I'm sure you need to feel the same thing, which is my goal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's helpful. So in the event where these kinds of conversations and this type of growth goes well, like maybe you spoke with someone in your family or a close friend or whatever the case might be, and they get the message, they want to reconnect, they want to re-engage in healthy relationship. What's the next step of building trust, and how do you go about kind of rebuilding that connection in a healthy way?
The fastest way to build trust in a relationship is to tell the truth. And so when you tell me, I don't trust that person, you just told me you don't tell that person the truth. And when you stop telling the truth in a relationship, you are contributing to the decline of trust. And distance has become your goal. So if you want to accelerate rebuilding trust with somebody who broke it, let's say your husband cheated on you, but you've decided to stay in the marriage because you actually believe that he's repented and that he is, he wants to reconcile, and he wants a restored marriage. So if you believe that's what's happening, then you should stay in that marriage, or you can stay in that marriage, and it'll work. But the whole time, from the early stages, you keep saying, I'm afraid of you. I'm hurt. I don't believe you right now. And I'm scared to believe you. And I felt super humiliated believing you for all that time, and you were lying to me like that. I still feel that. And you continue in that process until you start to heal, and that goes away because you see his response to, I need to feel protected by you. And until you feel protected by him, it's going to keep triggering those old things. And every time he tries to defend himself from you, and you say, and now I feel invalidated in what I'm feeling because you are trying to tell me I shouldn't feel this. Well, I do. And I don't feel protected right now, which isn't helping us. So it's the process of working that out, because some people think, well, it's my job to keep you in prison and punish you, stab you with a stick every once in a while for the next 20 years to just remind you what you failed. And other people think, I can't ever bring this up ever again because I forgave you. So if you want to accelerate trust in a relationship, get better and better and better at telling the truth. And the truth is what's going on with me, not what I think you're capable of.
That is really, really great. Danny, just we're going to wrap up here out of respect for your time. Something that I think is really helpful is when you talk about getting back to rejoice in hard conversations when we have those physical cues that tell us fear and stress. How do you advise people to reconnect and let the love and peace flow through us? How do we get back to operating out of a place of joy versus operating out of fear and self-preservation?
Listen to the whole earlier part of this podcast. And um, it has to be your goal. You'll never get to joy if it's not your goal. If you think it's somebody else's job to make you happy or somebody else's job to get you to joy, then you're missing the whole point. So it's got to be my goal to get back to joy. Um, when I experience fear or hurt or powerlessness in my relationship with God, it's my job to get back to rejoicing, worshiping, being grateful. It's not his job to make me do any of those things. So being a powerful worshiper of Jesus is what directs me to the things he told me are the best for me. So I will get myself back to those places because I trust that he truthed me and he wants to build trust with me. So I'm going to get back to rejoice. And again, I say rejoice and be thankful and give thanks and cultivate a grateful, worshipful heart because that's the very best place for you, Danny. Trust me.
Yeah. 100%. That's so good. I feel like, and it seems obvious to you, but even those of us that are chewing on this for a while, when you're faced with a problem, it feels like, okay, but what do I do if this arises and that arises? And
Yeah.
but this is a tangible. Any of us can worship. Any of us can say, I'm going to direct all my praise to you, Jesus, and you're going to align my heart to be kingdom minded, not worldly minded. Just wrapping up here, we love to talk about why does this stuff matter? And you say healthy whole families will change the world. What what word of guidance and hope would you leave people with about this kind of thing? Why this particularly matters in this, where we are in history right now, what is important about healthy whole families?
Well, we clearly understand that the adversary of our Father has leveled all his arsenal at devastating the family, at confusing our genders, confusing even the purpose of parents in a home. That the institutions should be the ones running things. You're like, oh my gosh, how did that happen? Well, it happens everywhere. Where Lucifer is trying to eliminate the role of father. See, the biggest problem in the world is father for Lucifer. So if we can extinguish the need for a father, we can extinguish the need for family. And I know that in my own personal upbringing, absolute chaos reigned in my upbringing and my family. And I know that it isn't until I had a father that I even took responsibility to be a protector, a provider, a connector. And so it isn't until we get our men back, really, to be providers, protectors, and connectors that whole healthy families aren't going to be established. So that's also part of the crusade, if you will, is to get our men back.
Oh man, what a good word. So true. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today and for giving us your wisdom and your advice. You guys can find Danny. His books are obviously all on Amazon, and you can also find him on lovingonpurpose.com. Is that right? I think that's your website. And the Kylo Show. Please just go drink up all of these things, and it is really, really helpful. And I'm going to share a testimony with you offline, how this really affected and changed my life positively. I'm so thankful for you. So thank you for today.
Thank you, Danny.
You're very welcome.